everybody, it's Dan Martin. Today's video is on the challenges of a golf swing from a face-on perspective. This will be an exploration into understanding the simple physics of the golf swing that everybody needs to understand to become more effective with their technique, but also to understand some of the roadblocks and what really happens in people's golf swing that may be hidden or maybe not understood fully because of the dynamics of the golf club and the tendencies that people have in their golf swing. And again, we're gonna pursue this from more of a face-on perspective. I'll have a second video that we'll pursue from a down-the-line perspective. So before we get started with the challenges of the golf swing, I want you to understand clearly what a golf swing is. The swinging part of the swing, what we would really call the swing, is once we get started in the forward movement, the golf club gets in a sling behind the wrists, and the radius between the club head and your center point has to extend freely. So why does it extend? Well, it's the capturing or the transfer of angular momentum. So a really skilled golfer gets good at getting the club head to naturally extend its radius from the center point. So let's just say the club head is a couple feet from my center point, which is the top of my thorax, at the top of my swing. By the time it gets down to impact, it's a good, let's say 4.5, 5 feet. So it's actually extended its radius. When anything is orbiting around a center point, if the radius extends, the speed that the object that's extending away from that center point is going to move faster and faster. It's going to accelerate. So we try to capture, again, angular momentum or angular acceleration by creating that. One of our bigger issues is that the golf club and the way it's designed, the way that we work with it and even perceive the action of a golf swing, we think that we have to create those things, but in reality you don't. So again, a really skilled golfer is very good at getting the club head or getting momentum going from an initial ground pressure. This is where we get our energy into our swing, and then they create a little rotation from that ground pressure that rotates the hips into the thorax, which immediately transfers momentum to the arms, and it starts to get this action to unfold on its own. Once you get it started, it works on its own, it accelerates freely on its own. Your job is to learn how to get it started and then stay out of the way. The challenges that most golfers face are basically twofold, but it comes down to the idea, again, is we want the radius to extend naturally through the transfer of momentum. Players tend to use their muscles or feel like they need to do something to actually make that happen. And that's one of the dangers when you try to learn golf by copying a golf swing, is you tend to fall into the pitfalls of making something happen. The other part of the issue is that a golf club, you can apply leverage to it and you can move it around because it's rigid. So it's not obvious that you have to capture the essence of the extension of angular momentum to hit the golf ball. So I'm going to kind of explain two really common face-on scenarios here that most struggling golfers have, but higher handicappers tend to have this one. So if you're newer to the game, you've been told to kind of keep your eye on the ball and try to make sure you hit the ball, you likely will develop an early cast. And so an early cast is trying to force the club to extend early. So you can use your muscles, and all of a sudden now you can see the club has extended from my center rapidly, but it actually overextends and kills all its energy early to the point where you actually have to pull it back in to hit it. And that often causes kind of a wipe across the golf ball, an outside-in swing path. But again, we call it casting because there's a leverage force being put on the golf club. So a golfer that's connected to the club head through its weight extends the radius artificially and then has to maneuver the radius back in. A skilled golfer, again, would not do that. They would just allow the radius to extend naturally. Another more common thing is, as a golfer gains skill, let's say more of a mid-handicap player, mid-handicap players understand, hey, the golf club's supposed to lag behind my wrist, but instead of it being a natural phenomenon as momentum extends, which creates lag and then a really, really sharp acceleration at the bottom, they tend to pull it down, hold it lag, trying to use their wrist muscles, and then throw it out late. And so they end up with kind of a flippy type of impact position that adds loft to the shot and loses a lot of energy. But generally, again, that's a little bit more skilled player. But either way, whether you're extending the radius artificially too much, or you're just trying to copy what it's supposed to look like, you're not letting the radius extend, and so therefore you're robbing yourself of speed. You have to be very strong and use a lot of muscle, and you can, to hit a golf ball well, but when you don't have the predictability of the extension of the radius of the club head, aligning that to whatever you intend to strike, if you don't have that predictability, then it's very, very difficult to become repetitive and really get a good sense of what's going to happen to your golf shot. So the question is, how do you learn how to extend the radius naturally? Well, the golf club has a major roadblock because of it's not symmetrical, it's got a heavy weight on the end, and it's rigid. So the easiest way to understand how to capture and teach yourself to allow momentum to extend and get the free speed that's available in the swing is to use my training aid, the Pro. So when we use the Pro, we'll talk about this here in the dynamics of the higher handicap player and the more mid handicap player. But first and foremost, the Pro teaches you how to get the golf club in a sling. And so what does it mean to get the golf club in a sling? Well, it means the only way you can extend a radius is to get it in a spot where it can extend. So if we want this to extend to collide with an object, it has to be in a sling, okay? It functions much like a trebuchet does. So when I work with the Pro, I've got a grip attached to a rope now that's massless that will only perform if I allow momentum to transfer through my body, if I capture the essence of angular momentum. So the first thing that happens when we come off the bend, you have to discipline your hands to not cast. So when you cast, it forms an angle. So anytime you see an angling form, you know that you are actually trying to extend the radius using your hands. But in physics, when you try to do that, it actually delays or it stalls the swing until all the components come back into alignment or become proportional to what they're going to rotate around. So as we work with our Pro, high handicappers can start to learn how to discipline their hands to not cast the golf club. And then we can work back to the golf club after we get that discipline, and we can start to practice, oh, okay, here we go. As I'm coming around the end, or coming around the top, I can start to teach my hands how to be passive and allow the golf club to get slung behind my wrist joints. And then that allows you to be able to feel the extent of angular momentum and collide it with the golf ball. Now secondarily, players that put leverage on the shaft and try to flip the golf club, so they understand what a golf club is supposed to look like, but they're still trying to muscle through it. The next thing is we get to learn what it feels like for that momentum to continue to go. So same thing, it's the same skill. The goal is to keep this thing in line all the way, but once you get good at getting it off the top here, you just learn how to let it extend away from you naturally. So it's pulling and catching up, and it's going this way. Notice that I'm not trying to spin my body really fast or put a lot of effort into it. All that it really takes is just to get a little impulse in there and it wants to keep going. Also notice I'm letting it go into my left arm only because I'm really feeling how momentum continues to extend. So I want to take advantage of that principle of physics, and all really skilled golfers do that. Once you understand the feel of that, you can learn how to put more speed and more energy into it. But most players try to put more speed and energy through muscle and effort, and then they never really capture that free speed that's available to the swing, and that's what the Pro can teach you. So in conclusion, the object of the golf swing is to extend the radius of the club head to its maximum as it strikes the golf ball. And if we're doing that, we're capturing the natural essence of the transfer of angular momentum. It's the free speed that's available in the swing. It's what makes the Tour Pro look effortless and easy. It's what makes the swing feel easier. As you improve your skill and you learn how to do that better, you can learn how to add speed. Our best vehicle for doing that is using the Pro, because the Pro teaches you by its design what it feels like to actually transfer angular momentum, so you don't get lost in trying to do things that are ineffective.